welcome to Pro Gaming Weekly. My name is Ben, aka Lignar. I want to say we have a short show for you this week because we only have highlights from 2 matches, but we have over 20 minutes of highlights, so the show's not really that short. Anyway, let's get started. Not much in the way of news this week, but one interesting item is that Millennium and TSL have formed a partnership. And basically it's an agreement to share gaming houses when their respective players are traveling, and a special program on Millennium TV regarding the players from the teams practicing. Also, it will allow Millennium players to participate in the GSTL alongside Team TSL when they're in Korea. A few weeks ago, a patch for StarCraft came out, and in order to improve balance, Zerg got a slight buff with Overlords moving a little faster and the anti-ground range on Queens increasing from 3 to 5, and Protoss got a little bit lesser buff, knocking 10 seconds off the build time for observers. And we've not had much of a chance to see what impact this will have on the pro game, but the top 4 at MLG Arena was 1 Toss and 3 Zerg, and it did seem to me that the Queen was completely shutting down scouting rather than just countering Hellions as it was intended to do, but it's still too early to say whether or not the patch went too far or it's just a change in the metagame that the players need to adjust to. The Red Bull Battlegrounds is this weekend in Austin, Texas. The tournament is invite-only, made up of 16 top-level pros. And maybe we'll get a better feel from this tournament on whether that balance patch made a change to the metagame or if Terran got an effective nerf that maybe went too far. That's it for any news this week. Like I said at the top of the show, we have a long set of highlights this week, but it's only 2 events. We have highlights from the ZVZ matchup of Violet and Symbol at the MLG Spring Arena 2, and the TVP matchup of MVP and Squirtle in the GSL Codes Finals. Both matchups were absolutely amazing, and let's just watch the highlights.
MLG Spring Arena 2, Violet versus Symbol. Violet's sick, guys. That's why he's wearing that mask. He's trying to not spread his germs. This is going to be a best of 5 unless Violet does not win the best of 5. Then it goes extended play best of 9. And here we're seeing Symbol, after having morphed a lot of Banelings, going after the mineral line of Violet, doing a lot of damage to the economy. Once these few Banelings here get to those drones, he has a total of 25 drones killed relatively early in the game, which is a huge blow to the economy, but not so huge that Violet's not able to put together this group of roaches to take down Symbol's third. The mutas come in, there's nothing the roaches can do to take him down, so they just eat the damage, and there's not enough to really take him out anyway. Symbol comes back with more Banelings. When this is all said and done, with just these Banelings at this point, he has killed 33 drones. Then it kind of turned into Roach on Roach, Infestor on Infestor. As you see in the picture-in-picture, my new favorite feature from MLG, there's a Nidus Worm coming in, but the Roaches come in to take it out while this fight's happening on the main screen. We got Roaches and Infestors, and Symbol manages to push through. Even though Violet just took down that expansion, Symbol just keeps pushing. He's got a lot of Roaches and a lot of Infestors with throwing down the Fungals. Symbol manages to fight off that flank from Violet there. Violet pulls back and allows Symbol's units to go through the choke, and that opens up room for infested Terrans to come in, and that is pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. Violet has to GG and give the win in Game 1 to Symbol, and we're going to head on to Game 2. In Game 2, this massive force of Roaches and Infestors from Symbol is ready to roll, except in the picture-in-picture we see Overlords dropping units, and we have a 3-pronged drop from Violet. And it's not every day you see Zerg dropping units. It's really not every day you see Zerg dropping units at 3 bases at the same time. So those Roaches and those Infestors had to go home to defend, but unfortunately for Symbol, they don't get there in time. This lair is going to go down. We see the other lair being attacked by Roaches and the PIP. We're switching to that view on our main screen, and these Roaches, that lair is going down. Even with this force coming in to fight them off, Violet manages to pick up all 8 of them and take them home. And then we've got this hatch in this expansion. It's going to go down, and what this means is 3 bases inside of 1 minute of gameplay. 3 bases down for Symbol. That is a huge blow to the macro, but it does not stop him from putting together this amazing force of Roaches and Infestors again. This massive amount of infested Terrans come in, and it pretty much destroys Violet's army. Violet has to take what few forces he has and turn home. But with the picture-in-picture you see, Roaches on Symbol's hatchery again, and the hatch will go down. It's amazing how much damage Violet was able to do to Symbol's macro. Here we got Violet pushing. He's got 2-2 upgrades. Symbol has 1-0 upgrades. No matter how many units you've got, you can't beat those upgrades with those odds. He has to GG, giving the win to Violet and tying this series up 1-1. In game 3, Violet pushes and Symbol lays down this Evo chamber to kind of wall off those Lings. He saw them coming, we didn't have that in the highlights. He also uses his queens on the ramp as a wall, and the placement of that Evo chamber is important because later on when these roaches are coming in, Symbol has to fall back and the roaches take down that Evo chamber, and what that does is means Symbol's going to be behind on upgrades. But this match, or this game rather, turned into basically a back and forth of using Nidus Worms to harass the economy of the other. We had Symbol there using a Nidus Worm to bring Infestors in to put Fungals on drones. We've got Violet here using a Nidus Worm to put his roaches in and take down the hatch of Symbol. Violet seemed to be able to do more damage this way, but Symbol was more frequent with the use and did it more often. Here we've got Symbol doing a drop in Violet's main, and even though Violet takes a ton of damage here, he eats these Fungals, he's got a bunch of roaches and infestors coming in himself, but he's also got these Broodlords, and they make the difference. There's no anti-air in Symbol's army. Even though Violet lost a lot of structures there, he cleans up this army and he manages to push to Symbol's natural, and he takes down the natural and the macro hatch, and that puts Symbol so far behind he has to GG and head us on into game 4, where we go back to this deny the expansion, affect your macro. We got Symbol denying Violet his 3rd expansion, which is okay by Violet because he's over here taking down Symbol's 3rd expansion, so it's kind of a fair trade. We jump ahead quite a bit after this expansion goes down. We jump ahead where Violet's got a decent sized army here and there's no infestors anywhere from Symbol to be found. I'm not sure if they're dead. I don't know if they're just in the wrong place on the map, but he tries to flank Violet's army. Violet turns, gets the Fungal down on that group of roaches, and that just sets it up for him to continue to roll and take out Symbol's army and then roll down and take out this base here while he continues to push. And even though here's some infestors from Symbol, Violet has to eat that Fungal, but he's just got too many units. The infested Terrans come out. That again allows him to continue to roll after he takes down that expansion. He pushes into Symbol's natural. Symbol gets a good Fungal here, except the Fungal kind of works against him because Violet got a Fungal down, and that managed to keep Violet's army out of the range of Symbol's infestors. Then that set up this opportunity for Violet to put the infested Terrans up on the high ground, which I believe made all the difference in this fight. With those Terrans up on the high ground, nothing's going to take them down, plus the roaches coming in and the Fungals going out. That's just too much damage for Symbol to take. He has to GG, give the win in MLG Arena 2 to Violet. Congratulations, Violet. History will be made in the GSL Codes Finals. We've got Terran playing MVP versus the Protoss Squirtle. Either MVP will be a first-time, 4-time champion, or Squirtle will be a Royal Rotor, which is a player who wins a championship the first time they possibly can. Their Squirtle loses a Stalker relatively early, which is bad for Protoss. MVP pushes with these Hellions, and he drops in the main. This two-pronged attack this early in the game when Squirtle lost that Stalker is kind of difficult to deal with, but Squirtle pushes with 4 Stalkers. He manages to break through the wall. MVP drops again in his natural. This push here with these Stalkers from Squirtle gets us surrounded by the SCVs. He loses his entire army except for like 1 Stalker. This push in his main he can't deal with. He has to GG and head us into game 2. And in game 2, here you see this Immortal. It's rallied to MVP's base, and that's a big deal because Squirtle had a brain fart and he loses this Immortal, which is bigger than losing that Stalker last time. Here MVP scouts with a stemmed Marine and gets a ton of intel for the cost of a Marine. Big deal at this point in the game, right? So he pushes in, forces a cancel on this expansion, and then he decides to scout some more with his Vikings a minute or 2 later. He lands to do some harass on the mineral here, but he loses his Vikings, and that's important here in just a minute. With the intel he's getting from those Vikings, he decides to push into the natural. But it doesn't work out well for him because the Immortals and the Stalkers on the high grounds and the force fields keeping his units away and on the low ground. MVP just takes too much damage, and he has to take this army home with his tail between his legs, hoping that he can fight another day. But that gives Squirtle enough confidence to push out with his 4 Colossi, the Immortals, the Stalkers. Remember those Vikings that are dead? Yeah, well, they're not fighting against these Colossi. Now, 2 did come in here, but MVP had a brain cramp of his own and doesn't decide to focus on those Colossi until it's too late. They just melt the Marines and Marauders of MVP. When Squirtle decides to push towards MVP's base, MVP pushes back out. He's got a ton of medevacs healing up. He flanks that force of Squirtle with some Marines and Marauders on the right-hand side there. Forces Squirtle to go home. MVP decides to push again. Even with the Colossus, with all of these Stalkers, he's got another Colossus now. He's got Immortals coming in. He's got Sentries, Force Fields coming in, Storms coming in. With his superior numbers, there's too many medevacs. The Vikings taking out the Colossus. He just can't deal enough damage to MVP's army to outdo what these medevacs are able to heal. Hardly any Terran units die here, even with the superior numbers of Squirtle. He has to GG and head us on into Game 3. And in Game 3, here we've got MVP pushing with Marines in the natural. We've got Squirtle pushing with Stalkers up into the main of MVP, with MVP's natural lifted and floating above the main. MVP pushes into Squirtle's main and manages to fight these Stalkers off at the same time, while he gets the pylon, the Artosis pylon, and the probes coming in here. There's not enough minerals for Squirtle to build another pylon, so he needs to take these guys in mind and let these Stalkers deal with these Marines, and they do a pretty good job of it. 3 Stalkers, 3 Marines. The Stalkers are probably going to win. Squirtle pushes again with this set of Stalkers, makes MVP lift his main again, and this is where we see MVP being as crafty as MVP can possibly be. He starts floating that base over his main. You saw him building another command center there, so he lands this one, which was the original natural, south. He floats the new one up to the natural. Squirtle never scouts that third base. MVP's doing a drop. Squirtle decides it's time to move out. MVP catches him off guard here, and Squirtle, again, doesn't know he's got that other base. He doesn't realize what kind of economy MVP has, and MVP's just got too many upgrades, too many forces. Squirtle just can't deal with it, especially when this drop comes in, and MVP has just got too many forces for Squirtle to deal with, especially with the drop going on, and then this attack here. He has to GG and send us on in to Game 4. And in Game 4, MVP goes for a third here. Squirtle goes for a proxy pylon. They don't see each other until Squirtle ends up seeing the base. He sends these 2 Zealots over, but he doesn't go for the SCV, which is a pretty big mistake. It would have delayed the build. I don't think it would have stopped it with that force of MVP's coming. MVP does a drop there in the natural. He's got another one we just saw. It's dropping in the main, and he's got that force that's going to push the third. He's doing a 3-pronged attack. The drops go pretty well. He loses the forces, but they do a fair amount of damage. He does keep the medevacs. This third, though, as you can see, the force fields, the storms, that push on the third is just not effective in any way, shape, or form. You see the ring there from the siege tank. He comes in trying to do some more damage. About the only thing he manages to do is tickles the Nexus a little bit, and he does get the pylon. No big deal. Squirtle manages to push him out. He comes out, the Immortals clean up the tank, sends this force back home, and then, just in a minute or two later, actually several minutes later, MVP is going for another drop. However, this medevac goes down and it's full, and that's huge. Huge loss for MVP. This drop comes in, he loses this medevac. The cannon and a Stalker take out the rest of the forces. Not an effective drop here. Then, in just a few minutes, Squirtle is going to go after MVP's fourth, and he's going to get it. And then he just destroys MVP's army because MVP decides it's time to go. He's basically, it's time to go for broke. So MVP here doesn't have as many medevacs as he had before. The storms are coming in, the feedback's coming in, the force field's coming in. He can't deal with it. He has to GG, and we're heading to Game 5. And this game is sick. This huge force of Stalkers and Colossus, and you see the Void Rays, they're hallucinations. MVP really wasn't fooled by them. He's got the Vikings. They focus down the Colossus. That leaves a ton of Marine Marauder medevacs, and even though those Stalkers, there's a lot of them, they can't deal with it. They have to run away and go home. Now we're going to jump ahead to where this mothership does a recall in MVP's main. Does a ton of damage, but MVP's got a ton of battle cruisers. They come in and they clean this force up, but he did take a lot of damage. He does manage to clean his force up, and then just shortly after that, he's taken an island. Unfortunately, the mini-map is not up right now, but he takes the island, which is the first time anybody's ever taken one of the islands in GSL, according to what Tasteless and Artosis were saying. And on that island, Squirtle decides to get a little crafty and does a recall on the island. And he loses this mothership, but he does take out the base, which is kind of a fair trade. But since the mothership went down, MVP says, you can have my base. I'm going to move out with my BCs. And these BCs start rolling. They do a ton of damage. He takes out these cannons, and watch how fast this Nexus goes down when the BCs focus on it. Disgusting. So he keeps rolling with these. Those units are stuck. He's doing a ton of damage with these BCs. There's no counter that Squirtle has until he builds another mothership. And he does the Vortex underneath the battle cruisers. It is amazing to see all this happen and see it all kind of build up. It was absolutely amazing. The Void Rays come in, take out the battle cruisers that are left. Then the rest of the battle cruisers pop back out. And unfortunately for them, there's too many forces here. They get taken out. Squirtle just rolls from here. He continues to do a ton of damage. The Void Rays come in. They're fully charged up. That's pretty much the entire force. Even though there's all these battle cruisers with fully charged up Void Rays, the mothership, the storms coming in, the battle cruisers really aren't a match for this many forces. Squirtle just rolls through this base. MVP has to GG, and we're heading in to Game 6. In Game 6, they kind of catch each other in the middle of the map a little bit here, both trying to push. Squirtle's army gets split, which is not good for him, but it works out in the long run here, you'll see. His army split, he doesn't get to do a ton of damage to MVP. Instead, he's taking a ton of damage. He gets a storm, decides to go home, but when MVP pursues, his army gets split, and that allows Squirtle to put a storm down and basically send MVP packing. But MVP in a little bit comes back. He sets up a contain here, a pretty powerful contain. Starts building a couple bunkers here. He's got some tanks that are going to come in a minute. You see the bunkers here going down in a second. But he tries to do some in and out, trying to get some units from Squirtle to follow him through the AI, just so he can help pick him off. Then a little bit later, Squirtle pushes a little bit, gets some storms down, does a lot of damage to MVP, doesn't do a whole lot, and then this happens. Waiting for server. But hey, we get a good shot of the crowd and see how big the crowd is, right? Anyway, it was the English observer that was lagging out. He left the game, and we're able to pick right back up. Then this just picks up right where we left off, with MVP doing an in and out, trying to pull some of these units to get the tanks to pick him off. What he doesn't know is there's a proxy pylon. I'm sure he did, he just didn't scout it. There's a proxy pylon that's allowing Squirtle to warp units in that are slowing down or stopping his reinforcements that are coming in. Then Squirtle gets these chargelets in his main and basically cuts off his supply of reinforcements. And so then he just decides it's time to push. Unfortunately for him, again, he doesn't have the medevacs to deal with all the storms and all those Colossus. He has to GG, and we're heading on in to Game 7. And remember when I said MVP had cheesed his way through the GSL Code S? Well, now he waits till Game 7 to set up 2 proxy racks. And they didn't get scouted, not right away. And what this is going to mean is a ton of micro. And honestly, it was really difficult to get the highlights here because there was so much to show, but then again, so much of it was just micro back and forth. The big things here is that Squirtle needs to not lose anything. He is way behind here. He's only got that one Stalker, and there's another one that just popped out. He needs to keep mining so he can keep building units, but he also needs to keep his units alive, so he needs to bring his probes down to help do some damage and help tank a little bit. It's just a huge... He's up against a wall. It's huge decisions he has to make every time. He needs to decide whether or not he's going to pull him away, to keep from dying, to bring him down, to do some damage, to keep this micro on his Stalkers. Every unit has to be controlled with absolute precision. He manages to push these Marines out and stop that bunker, but it's just short-lived. He tries to go after the barracks. The more Marines coming in, that Zealot's going down, the Stalker went down. Again, he's way behind. He's got a lot of Marines coming in. He's got that one Stalker. The Marines coming in, MVP is sending his SCVs as well. As you see here, and they just keep coming. And MVP has more units. He has a little bit better economy because he has got Squirtle up against the ropes. He comes in, there's another Stalker coming out. The first Stalker there is almost dead. He needs to keep it alive. A Warp Gate coming in. The Marines, again, go back to doing their thing of they're hitting the Warp Gate. You see a bunker going down. They're hitting the probes. They're hitting the Stalker. They're doing whatever they need to do, whatever they can do to stay alive, because they also need to stay alive. It's just a numbers game at this point. Who can micro better? They go down, they take out the gateway eventually. That Stalker pops out, dies instantly. The bunker is about to complete, and when it does complete, these Marines go straight into the bunker, and that is what pretty much seals the fate for Squirtle. Even though that doesn't mean he is dead. And actually, it just puts it more in MVP's favor. So they're in the bunker. These Stalkers decide to roll out, and then he decides to bring them back because there's just too much damage coming. He's got one probe down there fighting the mule, and the mules can't fight. So he ends up does get the mule, but it doesn't really matter because more energy can just calm him down later. There went the gateway. There went the pylon. The base is dark. They're taking out the Robo, and then here's the probe on the mule that I mentioned. Then once the Robo goes down, the bunker focuses on the Nexus, and the Nexus goes down relatively quickly. And that also does not mean Squirtle is out of the fight. He just needs everything to come out perfectly. And unfortunately for him, it doesn't do that. More Marines are rolling in. There's not a lot he can do here. It would be really cool for him to be the first Royal Roader. For those of you who don't know, it's riding the Royal Road, and that means that the first time he gets into Code S, he wins the championship. And he actually, statistically speaking, was looking better than anybody else who had ever gotten close. But still, history was made with MVP winning this, as Squirtle has to GG and giving MVP his 4th GSL championship. Just going to sit here and watch the rest of this, even though as sad as it may be for some of the Protoss out there. It was impressive play from both sides, and a very exciting matchup for a 7-game series. Congratulations, MVP, on your 4th championship.
Before we wrap things up, I want to remind you to go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/ProGamingWeekly and click on the like button. Once we hit 100 likes, we're going to give away a $20 Jinx.com gift card. So spread the word and help us hit that mark. The faster we get to 100, the faster we give away that gift card, and the faster we get to our next milestone and a bigger giveaway. That's all for this episode. So until next time, thanks for watching, and see you next week. God, it's hot as shit in here.